as a transparent organization plays in the extractive sector and looking at the need to have transparency in the transition arrangement, we have been so interested to embark on this project. We want to acknowledge the support of the EITI Secretariat in providing a consultant to help in the process of developing a work plan for energy transition in Nigeria. We're also happy that our consultant, Dr. Austin Oloroshola, as an energy expert with a lot of experience both at the local and international level, has been hired to provide this level of support. This meeting is held at the instance of him providing an outlook of what he has been doing in the past few months, and also creating an opportunity for various stakeholders to be able to input into the work that he's doing. The invitation has been extended to a number of stakeholders in recognition of their roles in the sector and experience in providing useful input in developing an energy transition for Haiti and indeed Nigeria. And so we want to use this opportunity to request that we provide that particular input to ensure that this work plan is robust and reflect the need of Nigeria as a key stakeholder in the energy transition question globally and locally. So we will request that Austin will present an outline of what he has been doing, and then that will provide us an opportunity to make inputs. And at the end, we should be able to agree on the way forward. So, having said that, I think I will stop at this point and allow Austin to make his presentation to the rest of us.
Okay, thank you, Doc. I just want to check that people can hear me. Hello.
Hi.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Because there was a session I was on, and I didn't know that I was just talking to myself for a very long time. So
yeah, sometimes it's like that.
Thank you very much. I don't know if Book is online. Can I share my screen so that? Okay. Thank you very much. I've seen that now. Okay. All right. Maybe just by way of intro again, just to back up Doc. So I'm an energy practitioner myself, with a lot of bias in oil and gas. Yeah, I've been around this space for like 4 decades plus, and I've done quite a lot of work, with a broad span from very serious technical things to, if you like, regulatory legislation type of things, to policy formation. Yeah, and lately a lot on energy, climate change and energy transition. So it's a bit broad. And I'm happy to to share some of this work with you today. It should have happened like 6 weeks ago, so that we can at least pick a lot of your brains into the cooking. But it's not late at all. And that's why we said better late than never. Let's still go ahead and do it. And the intention is that this will still be played back to you at some point in time, the next couple of weeks, to finalize this work. By way of context, again, this is strictly looking at how to assure revenue resilience from Nigeria's oil and gas. But of course, this same work has led to quite a few other things which we're also doing very much in parallel. But for today, I just want to share the tone around assuring revenue resilience and ask for your gracious input as we begin to put this in some kind of final touches. So I'm just going to talk about 3 key things. Maybe just set the scene a little bit, looking at the climate change as well as energy transition, how the linkages with all of that. And then the meat of this discussion is 2 and 3. So given 1, what then are the imperatives, especially for oil and gas, but more specifically for Nigeria? And then how can we assure revenue resilience? I mean, of course, you know, our production is declining seriously, and so also revenues. And I think everybody's feeling the pinch now, whether you're in the city or you're in the village, gradually. So let's start with, I just say here that really life is nothing without energy. And it is not just energy, it's got to be available and it's got to be affordable. In Nigeria and in Africa, you can actually say those 2, they don't check. It's not available and it's even not affordable. But to begin to even get it to the point, to the realms of, oh, I'm secured or I'm even sustained, you need to couple up those other 2 E's, which is economy as well as the environment. So these 3 E's, and very much so, of course, if you also add the fact that people now just want to dominate other people, constitute all the global events you know today, whether it's the war in Ukraine, whether the feats around things in Asia, or even geopolitical issues internally as well as externally. It's all around these same three things: it's energy, it's economy, and it's about the environment. So specifically on energy, then the key drivers, of course, we all know: it's population, it's life, way of living, which is sophistication, but also affordability, which is the economics aspect of it. If it is available and it is not affordable, people don't easily just rush into it. But lately now, there's also a key criteria around environment, making sure that we're doing things, but not necessarily to jeopardize the generations to come. I'm sure not many people also understand the fact that the last major energy transition was like 400 years ago. It was actually in the early 1800s when coal was struck, and it began to displace biomass. And since then, if you like, up to today, the predominance had become from solid fossil, which is coal, to the sedimentary type of fossils, which is oil and gas. And the mix has been shifting since then, and you can see it on the chart on the right-hand side there. So we've basically been the whole world been run by carbon economy for a very long time. But about 20 years ago, it was beginning to get really clear, or slightly more, that this is not going to be environmentally acceptable going forward. And that's where the whole discussion of transition started. And people ask me, oh, there's so much talk around climate change, there's so much talk about emissions, there's so much talk about energy transition. It's the same journey, guys. It's all the same journey. It's just that maybe some people have moved pretty faster than the other. So it is emissions that gives rise to temperature rise. It is temperature rise that causes a climate change, and it is the climate change that is the trigger for the energy transition, which is a lot of the things I'm going to be talking about today. There's so much information here, but I'll send all these materials to you so that you can have them. But specifically on emissions itself, there are two big ones. There is carbon dioxide and it's methane, and this is the reason why there's so much focus on fossil fuels, because those are the two big stuff that are dominant in terms of composition, that are dominant in fossil fuels, whether it is coal or whether it is oil or whether it is gas. And yeah, so again, someone asked questions about, so where is all these emissions coming from? Incidentally, it is not even from the producing nations. The top 10 emitters in the world are the big developed world, and you can see all of them there, headed by China, US, and India. They have the largest footprint of emissions around the whole world. The whole of Africa is not even up to some countries, not even up to, it's about the same as Australia, as small as it is. So it's, you can say yes, it's not from us, but it really is because Africa is very much least developed. But because you cannot cage or you cannot compartmentalize the environment, solutions must be co-created and structured in a way that it is cooperative, it is collaborative. You can also have solved very much different from COVID. In COVID, you could shut down your airport. You could decide that people cannot go out or people cannot come in. You can't do that with climate. It's just over time, it rolls and rolls and rolls over. So it's just got to be done together. And so that was why the first major attempt at pulling everybody together, and it is pretty difficult, pulling the whole world together in one room, was the Paris 2015 COP21. And that's happened immediately after the SDGs, the 17 SDGs were concluded in New York in September. That's in particular year. And the whole essence was to see how they could get the long-term temperature to keep the increase in global average temperatures very well below 2 degrees, and asking countries, please go back, look at it, see how you can contribute, because it requires the contributions of vertically all human beings and all countries all around the world. So since then, of course, everybody has been making commitments, making dates and all that. One of the things that is so striking is the fact that if you assemble all those dates, all those targets of net zero, this, net zero, that, it spans almost 50 years, because some people are looking at late 2040, some people are looking at early 2090. So, and 50 years is quite a long time, even in a man's life. But that is what it is. The second thing is that there were quite a lot of confusion between pledges. Are you looking at net zero carbon dioxide, or are you looking at net zero greenhouse gas? So a lot of focus is more on the net zero carbon dioxide, because that's where the whole world gravitated to, the so-called 2050 target date. But just to know that it's pretty wide. Our president, of course, in November last year, gave a date of net zero 2060, and basically that's what we'll be working on as a country. So since 2015, of course, a lot of things have happened, and I've talked about what has happened 1 and 2. So number 3, there's quite a lot of policy and legislative interventions all across the whole world. Some countries are, like UK, for example, says from the next 8 years, there'll be no liquid vehicle running on the streets of the UK. Okay, so you're not going to see petrol or diesel cars any longer. Some countries are even bringing it down to 2025. Okay, so all sorts of and when they make those commitments, they support them with policy as well as legislation. Okay, just to make sure that everything aligns. There's also a lot of energy efficiency interventions all around the world. Portfolio optimization, of course, we see that happening even in our backyards here, with so many companies now going into all sorts of divestments. Of course, maybe also due to other reasons, but I can tell you that the drive around energy transition is also your major consideration. So much discussions also going around climate finance, carbon tax, emissions trading, and even up till about 2-3 weeks ago, our vice president was still going around in Washington, in New York, talking around this. And yesterday or the day before yesterday, I still had our vice president, also President Buhari, talking also around this same set of subjects. One of the biggest things that energy transition has triggered is electrification of everything. And I think this is probably going to be one of the biggest innovations and technology shifts since internet, okay? Where, of course, internet has taken over quite a lot of things. The next big thing you're going to see it's electrification of everything. And that's a major intervention or response to energy transition. And as that is happening, there's still quite a lot of things going on in the backyard around technology, AI, all sorts of things, robotics, battery technology, too many things really happening. And of course, at the back of that, we had the COP26. And in November this year, there's also going to be COP27. I think COP27 in Egypt this year will then begin to look at a lot more really begin to really monitor country commitments, okay? And this is where a part of what Acting here has just mentioned around even the transparency of your data itself. It's something that is going to be a major talk. They call it transparency in transition. It's going to be a major discussion in Egypt this year, because it's so difficult to monitor over 200 plus countries in terms of emissions reduction. But since then, of course, we've seen various outlooks. This is about almost 20 or so different outlooks of 2040, what the energy mix is going to look like, both in terms of volume, but also in terms of percentages, in terms of mixes. You can believe any of them, doesn't really matter. But one thing the whole of them say in terms of storyline is that first are nose diving. So we know that very, very clearly. There will be growth in nuclear, there will be growth in renewables, okay? And of course, a little bit of gas. There's going to be a lot of emphasis on efficiency. So the unit energy per capita is not going to be like it is today any longer. So the feeling is that there's still so much waste. Okay, but it's certainly going to be different going forward. And there's a redefinition around energy security and energy sustainability. Of course, that has been helped by the recent or actually ongoing war in Ukraine. So whether you say I'm secured, but being backed by another person, it has shown that it's no longer going to be so. Only God knows how the winter is going to be in Europe this year, because of that war. Russia is bent not sending anything in there, and the time is so short for Europe to really react. There's quite a lot of things they are doing, including every country now looking at how they're going to ration energy, ration power all through the winter. But yeah, we'll see how it goes with that. So overall, the train is on. There's nothing anybody can do about it. Decarbonization is the destination. We just have to join. But recent events, we are seeing that there's so much discussion around let's transit. And because of that, people have even shut down some coal plants before and all that, but they're reopening them. Like I said, it's all because countries like Germany, US, Japan, they're bringing back all their coal plants. So all they did was just to lock up the doors or the gates. They didn't particularly dismantle them. But now we're saying that, you have to live today to see tomorrow because of the exigencies of the times. And so a lot of people are even bringing back coal. It will affect the transition journey, but the whole idea is that they will still catch up much later. There's a lot of new built nuclear plants ongoing in the UK that didn't even want to go into that zone for a long time. There are 6 nuclear plants ongoing right now as we're sharing this document in the UK. Like China, of course, even UAE almost concluded 2 nuclear plants as we speak, And of course, there's still quite a lot of oil exploration, and people say, we won't need oil, we won't need gas. No, that's not really true. It's only about 3-4 months ago that both Shell and Total are discovering huge volumes in offshore Namibia, deep offshore for that matter. When you're talking of discovery in 2022, you're talking of you can't make your money back until maybe 2032, 2035, which means they're there for a very long haul. These companies, if they don't see that distance, they will not even strike drilling at all. So there's still quite a lot of hope for oil and gas going forward. Of course, South Africa, Total made a huge find also in the deep offshore. Last week, US was still giving out giving out assets, licenses. So there's quite a lot going on. Saudi wants to increase their production to 13 million barrels per day, and they are doing everything possible to do that. UAE is doing the same thing. So it's quite, it's a bit of mix, but I only call it as a distraction. As they're doing all this compliant, if you like, energies, they're also doing a lot of things in parallel to make sure that they imbibe renewables. So that's just the much I really wanted to talk about what is happening around the climate change and energy transition space. But the question is, what then is the imperatives of all these on oil and gas? Because whereas some people see it as good omen, some see it as very, very bad news. Some people read as serious challenge. Some people see them as opportunities. For me, the good news is that oil will remain in the mix for a very, very long time. Okay, it's going to remain. It's just going to drop in terms of fractional percentages, but it's still going to be there. But it also has a bad news, and the bad news is that the oil that will be required going forward will not be the one that you require for every generation per se. Yeah, so it will be more around the ones it will not be that same what we're doing today. Period. That's what I want to say. So we have to think a little bit differently. So those who see it as a challenge say that as the transition gets on the way, the landscape will experience significant changes. Of course, that's very, very true. So in the very short term, you will see that there's going to be a rush to capture residual value from oil. And we're seeing that. The US is doing that. The Saudi Arabia is doing that. UAE is doing that. UK is doing that. So everybody is doing that. So the question you ask, what's Nigeria doing? Okay. There's a lot of portfolio and investment shifts. We're seeing that. There's a lot of increase in emphasis in natural gas. Yes. Here in Nigeria, we've declared by policy a decade of gas, but all that same policy must be backed by serious, measurable roadmap of key actions, okay, and which we can follow through. Governments are changing a lot of, are doing a lot of reforms, not just in energy space, because the whole discussions around energy transition even affect agriculture, it affects forestation. So all this must all be brought together and reformed in one form or the other and backed by regulations that have teeth. Energy efficiency, like I said, technology and innovation, and of course, growth in renewables. The second major challenge is specifically for oil, okay, especially for countries like ours that solely depend on it for revenues. What you will see from now, basically going forward, it may not be too apparent from tomorrow, but certainly in the next 5-10 years, you're going to see a lot of contraction in demand for oil. So it will start going down a little bit. Now, when that happens, don't forget that countries like Nigeria, like South Africa that I've just mentioned, Guyana, that are just coming on stream, they won't keep that oil under the ground. So they will all pump it to the surface. What that would trigger is a supply glut. One of the things that with supply glut is that prices will be beginning to weaken. So which means you're going to low oil prices, and that may last for a very, very long time. Sorry, there's a bit of, are you still hearing me?
Yes, we are.
Yes,
We can hear you. Can everyone mute? Can we everyone mute and allow only Austin to speak?
Okay, thank you very much for that. So once prices are weakening, what you will see in country here, even among the operators, is that we will start to shut down the high cost volumes, because there's no point bringing in something that the cost is high, but then you're going to get a lower price for it. There's no point. So you're going to have a lot of deferred production. Once you begin to have deferred production, it means your volumes are reduced. Then it means and in a weakened price situation, revenue to the country also then becomes very, very low. Okay. Once that then begins to happen, it means your ability to reinvest becomes also pretty weak. Therefore, you have situations where you then have what I call muted investment. Okay, there will be no investment at all. And once you cannot invest, then you just keep these volumes deferred. The next thing is that, well, maybe I don't need these assets anymore. They become stranded. Then you start to think of, okay, maybe I should sell it. I should divest. Okay, before the price becomes zero, let me just quickly sell it off completely. Yeah, it's a bad story, because when we get to, and I pray we don't get to such a situation. If you get to such a situation with a population of 200 million plus people, you will easily trigger a socio-political crisis across the country, because there's just no money to feed everybody. And if then that happens, then the whole energy transition plan, NC, the national commitment plan we have, everything we're even talking of around now will fail, because we won't even look at energy transition anymore. So this is a road to Kinshasa that I think, I pray that we don't go through, but there is a major challenge specifically for oil and gas. One of the things the world must watch, okay, is the speed and the scale of this transition, because there's so much discussions around it, and some people almost feel that God should even take me away before this thing happens. Don't think that way. I think the world has to be very, very careful with both the speed as well as the scale. Otherwise, you're going to trigger a huge crisis across. Just look at a needle just moving within Ukraine and look at what it has cost around the whole world in terms of energy pricing, inflation, everything. So my view, frankly speaking, is that while climate change seriously appears increasingly devastating, because we see it every day, there's flood here, there's fire there, there's hurricanes there, and all that. Unmanaged decarbonization, for me, I think, may actually be much more catastrophic to life. So this is a dual challenge that as the world is looking at this, I think we should also keep that seriously behind us. And this is where I see an opportunity for energy transition, especially for oil and gas, for Nigeria. For me, in the short to medium term, if we can do these two things, we'll be very much in line. The first is find a way to attract investments, okay? While implementing all levers to strengthen cost competitiveness, things around your fiscals, of course, this huge insecurity issue, and I will talk a bit more around that, ease of doing business, assuring host community, inclusiveness, and going forward, we may have to look for new markets. Maybe the kind of people we're selling to today may not need them anymore from next week. So we need to look at new markets. And I think the whole of Africa is a big market waiting for us. So I think if we put some serious thought, policy, legislation around this particular area, thank God PIA has come, but it's to walk around that. I think we will achieve this rush to capture the residual value from oil and gas. The second is, while capturing this value, let us also begin in parallel to look at renewables. Okay, I saw that in the ETP, which the Vice President launched about 3 weeks ago, he was talking about a spend of $10 billion per annum till 2060. That's almost $410 billion required only for energy transition for Nigeria. Guys, that money is not going to come from loans or people from Dash or AIDS and everything. Nobody's going to give you 410 billion. My view, a lot of it still has to come from internal, when you talk of internal, the only area you can get this kind of money is from oil and gas. So we have to do something around oil and gas, and I'll talk a bit more on that also later. So given all that imperatives on oil and gas, both good and bad, a challenge, but also as well as an opportunity, how then can we assure revenue resilience the way we saw it while we're carrying out this study? And I will again pray that you should also, if you can also give us your own insights when I'm through. Of course, oil and gas, we all know it's pretty, we're very much there globally, and is a cornerstone for Nigeria's economy. We all know that, whether in terms of revenues or in terms of forex earnings, or even in terms of GDP. GDP used to be a lot more higher, 30 or even 40s at some point in time. So it's a very, very important cornerstone industry for us in Nigeria. Yeah, I said times before we were just singing and enjoying. For 40 years, we could easily do 2 million barrels per day. All you need is just wake us up at 1 a.m. and we'll do 2 million barrels per day, because we had the capacity, we had the wherewithal, we had the infrastructure connectedness, and the source was still very, very prolific, whether it's in land or whether it's in the shallow, not even to talk of the deep offshore. That is just, we're just scratching. So we're pretty fine, and we're fine from mid-70s up to very, very recent. In 2009, when we were doing the 2020 Vision 2020, I remember pretty well, we were even thinking of by 2020, which we thought was so far away, we'll be doing like 3.54 million barrels per day production. And we had other indices for reserves and all of that. And it wasn't out of place, because the trajectory then was seriously looking upwards. And we thought we really could do that. But unfortunately, we started having a very catastrophic nosedive from 2012. And since that day, honestly, you can see it, we've just been coming down the hill to the extent that as at end of August last month, I'm told that we did less than 1 million barrels per day. A company like Shell, SPDC, not even Shell Nigeria, because there is deep water and all that. Shell was doing 1 million barrels per day in 2005, 2006, 2000, one company alone. Okay, today you have at least 30, 35 producing companies, and we are all scrambling to less than 1 million barrels per day. It's pathetic, and this talking about revenue resilience. The only thing you have control of is your production. You don't have control of oil price, because that's globally and it's only the two of them that determine revenue, is volumes and price. So whereas you don't have control of price, hold on to the volume and push out as much of it as you can. But where we are today is really pathetic. And you can see it in terms of revenues over time. We've come down almost from oil alone, all from the 80s. Today we're talking of probably it's going to even be less than 20 this year. It's really, really unfortunate, which is 25% of what it was about 10 years ago. And even more painful is the fact that oil price is high now, but unfortunately, while everybody is smiling to the bank, we are crying away from the bank because we just didn't get all the indices pretty right. So the windfall we will have gotten is not there. We've tried to look at, so what exactly, holistically, what exactly are the reasons for all this? I'm not going to go through everything. We'll do that at a later date. But I can tell you that of the 50 or 55% decline we have seen in the last 10 years, there's something technically we call natural decline, which is just aging. There's nothing you can do about that. That's about 12, 13%. You can't do anything about that. There's something I call here muted investment. Muted investment because of all the long period, we did not make up our mind with the PIB, which eventually became the PIA. It has seriously affected our industry. People don't understand that even when we were in the onshore alone, okay, onshore and shallow water, the combined capital spend every year for you to keep that 2 million barrels per day was about between 20 and $25 billion combined, spent by all these companies at that point in time. In the last 10 years, we struggled to do even 5 or 8. So we've completely, and so why are we crying about the decline? Of course, it's pretty clear. If you don't reinvest, there's nothing you can do. Now, the third bucket here, which I call external, that's also where things like the theft situation, the vandalism situation, the sabotage situation, but also the impact of energy transition. That is where it is. So I'm going to be discussing all this in greater detail at some other time, but this is really where just the cocoa of the matter is. And I hear a lot of discussions around theft. Theft is not everything. So the whole gamut of decline, it's not as if everything is stolen, okay? No, that's not true. There's a bit of it that companies have just locked up under the ground by themselves because you don't want to continue to produce and give to a thief. That's not theft. It's a defilement. There's a bit of it that yes, you can get up because you did not invest. Okay, there's a bit of it that has just is gone because it is age, which you call natural decline. But I also agree there's quite a sizable volume that are actually stolen on daily basis. So what are the kind of responses purely from energy transition perspectives that Nigeria is doing or should be doing? Of course, a robust plan and roadmap is the first major thing, okay? You need an architecture for that. And thankfully, thank God, 3 key things have happened already, okay? Our president has announced the 2060 net zero carbon emissions target. The Ministry of Environment has followed up with what we call nationally determined contributions to commitments to emissions reduction. So that's also pretty clear. It's again to guide this journey. It talks a lot about things around adaptation mechanisms, mitigation, and all those kind of stuff. And then 3 weeks ago, like I said, 3 weeks ago, the vice president launched the Nigerian Energy Transition Plan. It's a strategy and policy document. So you won't see any detailed plan in it, but it's a strategy document which basically paints the ends of the journey, which is good because like leaders say, begin with the end in mind. So they've begun with the end in mind and say, okay, fine. And one of the big things they find was the fact that for us to meet the 2060, which our president has committed to, this country needs $10 billion per annum up till 2060, beginning from this year, okay, to actually really meet our net zero commitment. That is really, there's nobody who is going to dash you 10 billion every year. And this is where oil and gas, which is the main thing we have, we really need to think twice about it. What's more to do? This policy, ETP, that the vice president has launched, needs to be disseminated. When I say disseminated, what does it mean to Ministry of Agriculture? What does it mean to oil and gas? What does it mean to power? What does it, so it's going to affect policy reforms across all the sectors, okay? And once you have policy reforms, usually you may need to tweak your legislation, okay, to align with some of those policies. In this particular instance, for example, we're going to be reviewing even the NATI Act, for example, okay? We need a detailed bottoms-up project managed roadmap, okay? Mr. Vice President has given you the top-down. Now, we all need to build a bottoms-up roadmap, okay? And the fourth thing I have, they're very important. I was involved in maturing the PIA or PIB for more than 10 years. And one of the things people always ask me, if I would do it again, what would you do differently? I keep saying, one of the biggest things we did not do, which I thought is a failure, was we didn't have a business continuity plan. Business continuity plan in the sense that, if this process, okay, tarries for more than 2 years, 4 years, 5 years, this is what we're going to do. We didn't do that. And that was what led to that muted investment for about 15 years because of uncertainty in the business. So how then do I also see that revenue resilience can be made intact once we are through with all these structural elements around energy transition, the strategy, the plan, and the detailed roadmap. For oil and gas specifically, we should be seeking very serious financing sources, okay? Both for the energy transition, but also you need oil and gas. Like I said, Nigeria needs more oil to get out of oil, because that's really where our money is coming from. I think our production should go as high as even 3 or 3.5. Now, don't forget that you are just under 1 today. So whatever it needs to be done, and I believe we can do it, it's only if we get together and agree to honestly to do it. We need to take full advantage of gas that has been defined and agreed globally as a transition fuel, okay? And it has a lot of leverage from PIA, because if there's anything in the PIA that is so robust, it's about gas expansion. So we need to take adequate opportunity of that. Efficiency, cost is going to happen. Otherwise, if you bring out very expensive oil, you will not be able to sell it in the market, except you are prepared to drop the price. And you can't drop the price less than the cost that you actually get spent in getting it out. Like I said, we must begin to look at trading options and destinations. It may not be the same people any longer. In-country value adds, we must do that as much as possible. Build capacities and capabilities. All these people that are jackpotting, it's not, yes, it's good, but frankly speaking, we need people, we need young people to drive all this. We must expunge wastes. Okay, all the so-called discussions on subsidy. Why are we talking about it? It's complete waste. We cannot assure revenue resilience if tomorrow again you are going to waste it on subsidy. It doesn't work like that. And as we're doing all that for oil and gas, let's also begin to have an eye on renewables. I think that's really where I want to stop. That's where we have gotten the study to so far. But to be nice to hear the collective insights of people, their intuition, whatever suggestions you have from the framework of how can we assure revenue resilience from oil and gas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doc. We will now take inputs from all participants. If you want to make any comments, please just indicate, put on your mic and speak.
Okay, good afternoon. I thought I raised my hand. So can I go ahead and speak?
Please go ahead.
Thank
Just
you
introduce
so much,
yourself.
Sir. Thank you so much, sir. I'm Comrade Taiwo Titolaye. I'm the National Coordinator, Publish What You Pay Nigeria. I appreciate the good work of the doctor. I want to make some observations. Our input is better late than never. So, which means
Yes.
I'm assuming that if the document has gone to the 12th hour, maybe 11:58 p.m. or so. Maybe I just put it together. Now, on its title, Revenue Resilience from Nigeria's Oil and Gas. My question is, or maybe my input is, the revenue resilience is driven by productivity. He talks about production. Are we actually in charge of our production, the oil and gas in Nigeria? No, the IOCs are in charge. Do we know the quantity of oil we produce? No. He also talked about maybe they deliberately lock it underground to prevent producing to give it to be stolen. That is the truth. So, starting from the topic, oil and gas. The word I'm happy is said the train has moved. So, energy transition. Publish What You Pay, we see it from a holistic perspective. So we call it just clean energy transition. So it's not just energy transition. So just means that it has to involve all stakeholders. Here we think about the government, the civil society, the private sector organizations. So it has to be a tripod arrangement for effective participation. So if the vice president has launched maybe is it plan or whatever, who made those plans? What input? Where was the input? And the also thing is that you talk about finding new market because we may not be able to sell our oil and gas. So, yeah, I would rather say new markets and diversification. New markets and diversification. Because we have to diversify. Even within Nigeria, there are little efforts in terms of alternative energy. Even some government agencies are beginning to convert maybe fossil to renewable. This, how can we identify these ones? How can we work with it? Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. The oil of future is not going to be for revenue generation. I'm quoting the doctor. So what is Nigeria doing? What will be Nigeria? It's not going to be, which means there can be no revenue resilience. So we have to think along it. Clean energy transition. I agree with you. You need what you have to get what you don't have now. What you have now is oil and gas, but how can we maximize it? The bottom line is also we talk about physical transparency. The system as it is. Yes, agree. By 2023 budget, we are talking about 6.7 trillion subsidy. There have been subsidy probes in the past, and currently the National Assembly is also trying to probe. We have seen that subsidy is a scam. Do we actually consume 65 million liters of refined oil daily in Nigeria? What of the leakages in that's what a research which Foster defunct now conducted between 2016 and 2017? Stolen oil are resulting from just smuggling alone, not NMPC, no, smuggling alone, 3.8 trillion. Within the same year period, 2016 and 2017, what were allocated to education and health sector was 189 billion. That is just 8.4% of the stolen one from all these things. So let me not waste time so that I think we have not actually engaged. So don't let it be better late than never. We need to fully consult and engage. And in this arrangement, it has to be just clean energy transition. Everybody, so that it's not those who polluted our environment, those who looted our this thing should not be those solely driving this clean energy transition. We need to discuss further. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Otitolai. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can we take more comments?
Yes, please.
Can I speak? Can I speak? I've got my hands up.
Yeah, Mike, go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. My name is Michael Uzoigwe. I'm the country manager for EITI for Anglophone Africa. And I have to start by apologizing for joining very late. I had some strange battle with technology that time. So, and I might be saying a few things that might appear boring because I know that Nate, Dr. Donald, and Mr. Lawrence Shola probably would have highlighted some of the points that I want to make here. The first thing to say is that EITI is collaborating with NATI to collaborated with NATI to commission this study. And we're very happy with the level of progress we have achieved so far. We thank Mr. Lawrence Shola quite a lot, and also NATI. I wanted to just point out that generally, yes, EITI is interested in the level of transparency or reporting that can be achieved around government planning for energy transition. But Mr. Olonshola has created a perfect kind of perspective or background to the entire issue. But the EITI wanted to see how we could support to emphasize the role that EITI implementation can play in the entire process as well through this study. Okay, so we're looking at how implementation can also inform the thinking around energy transition planning. And there are two key areas that I wanted to emphasize. The first one is about the data that emanates from EITI reporting. Okay, we want to see also, and this is because we are calling for input now from most people that are on this platform, and I have seen the list. These are also people who have been following EITI right from the very beginning. So we want to see how we can make that argument that EITI data can also support energy transition planning, right? Over 2 decades of yearly data on revenues, production data exist within EITI reports. So we want to see what has affected production in the past or revenue generally in the past, and how when you layer energy transition on top of all that, how that would affect revenue resilience in Nigeria. So that is one aspect of it. The other aspect of data still is when we look at the data coming from EITI reporting, are there gaps in terms of what we should be asking reporting entities, the kind of data we should be requesting from reporting entities that will help energy transition planning in the future? So we expect that by the time we look at the existing data, we might also find areas where we'll say, how can we adjust or adapt EITI implementation in terms of the data we request from reporting entities that will help our planning for energy transition. So this is one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is how can EITI implementation provide a platform for dialogue to stimulate discussion around how we plan for energy transition. And part of it is what we are doing today as part of this study. So this engagement will have to expand beyond the core stakeholders who are involved in EITI. By the time the study is ready, we are also expecting that there will be an expanded forum for discussions around the gaps in our systems coming from this study that we can discuss how to address, right? In terms of the legal framework, the policies that are in place for strengthening revenue. There are so many aspects of the discussion on energy transition, and I appreciate the comment made by Taiwo. But as far as this study is concerned, we're trying to, just narrow on this particular aspect. Other things can follow afterwards. But how can we? This study focuses on these two key areas of the data emanating from EITI reporting and the platform that EITI implementation presents to promote dialogue around legal framework or policies that we can embark on in addressing energy transition opportunities and risks. So on that note, I thank you so much, all of you, for joining, and I'm sure that Mr. Dona would have welcomed you all. I'm joining him to welcome you all as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you,
Any more
Mike.
contributions?
There's Faith.
Yeah. Faith, can you go ahead?
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Thank you so much for the presentation and the research that has gone into this. I think this paper contains a lot of information that we can actually begin to work on. But I need some clarification around the fact that this is a point that we have made over the years. When the the West started campaigning for the closure of coal and the usage of coal, Nigeria jumped on and closed all our mines. And then the issue of coal became something, that we didn't continue to develop in the country. Now, because of the energy crisis we're having, we're seeing that the developing countries are opening up and coming back to coal. It's not like that they stopped the use of coal for a very long time, but Nigeria was one of the very first countries because coal was described as dirty energy and we didn't develop what we have. Now there's this conversation around energy transition, and I appreciate the clearance that Dr. Mike just gave on the issue. What do you think we should begin to do now? In your presentation, you mentioned that the oil that we have is still very relevant, but with the new finds, we may be having issues of glut. What exactly should we be doing while we're engaging at the global level a conversation for energy transition so that we don't fall into the same kind of issues we had when we decided to close our coal mines? And then secondly, I agree that a lot of EITI reports that we have will help us to engage this conversation, the data that is there. How is this accessible to the ordinary Nigerian? What is the issue? How do we present it to ordinary Nigerians to really understand the whole conversation about energy transition and where we have to go, so that we don't end up just joining the bandwagon because the world is saying energy transition, this is where we are going. We have oil. Even though we have not been able to meet up with our quota by OPEC, we still have that. We are dealing with issues of oil theft and other things. But what exactly should we be doing? How do we engage this conversation around energy transition when we know that our mainstay is oil and gas?
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Faith. Any other contribution?
Yeah, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, my name is Basi Udo. I represent MITE on this platform. My concern really has to do with the problem, the dilemma that Nigeria and all other developing economies are in terms of how do you reconcile the quest for energy transition at the time that we have so much oil, both the ones that have been proven to have been produced and the unproven volume that is still in the ground? How do you reconcile that quest when a lot of communities in Nigeria in particular require the resources that can help them have access to the value from the energy that is behind them? Now, if the federal, as the federal government keeps talking about the need for the world, who are accused of being responsible for most of the challenges that we are facing right now as a country. Now, asking people to abandon the development of resources and jump on the energy transition, how do they reconcile the fact that we still need many years in terms of technology, in terms of money, to be able to develop the undeveloped resources that we still have on the ground? So balancing the need for energy transition and the need for us to be able to develop the little oil that is left for us to produce is my concern. So how do we go about that now to ensure that we have a win-win situation at the end of this transition? Thank you.
Thank you. Any more?
Yes, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for that presentation. My name is Muna Ogochukwu. I work with the Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center, CISLAC. So I just wanted to pick on something you mentioned. I hope you can hear me. Sorry.
Yes,
yeah,
Muna.
I can hear you.
Okay. Okay, so I just wanted to pick on something you had mentioned around shifting trade options and destinations. You know, how we can start looking towards new markets, you know, intra-African markets. And I think there's one of those opportunities that seems to have been relegated to non-oil products, and that's the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. And I think it's one of those policy or legal framework areas that we should start looking towards. Nigeria we currently have a plan to take about 10% of Africa's imports from the world. And so far, there has been a lot of focus on non-oil products. And since 2021, when the agreement was launched, till date, we seem to be lagging behind in operationalizing the agreement on our own end, for various reasons, from structural challenges. There's been a lack of consensus on trade protocols and strategies amongst the various stakeholders. And currently, there's a pilot phase where 7 African countries have been selected to test the environmental, legal, and trade policy basis for that trade. And they were able to submit their tariff schedules, and that was primarily responsible for their selection. So I'm just thinking around how we and the Navy can start looking towards engaging that process, to start pushing for and paying attention to how we can improve product standardization and strengthen our value chains in the energy sector towards capitalizing on the African markets. The trade facilitation, our policies, infrastructure, that's free movement of people and goods and all of that. So I just thought there may be a need to bring that to the table. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ogochukwu. Any more?
Yes. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Good presentation. A lot of very interesting insights shared. My name is Tengido Dukoi, and I'm with Natural Resource Governance Institute. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, great. So just to, questions, that I have. First, I want to pick up on something that you said. You mentioned that the oil that we're using today will not be used in the same way, and that there'll be a different sort of use and approach to it in the future. I'd like a bit more of an expansion on that potentially. And then obviously we're talking about fiscal resilience, and I sort of wanted to, build up on something that you had alluded to, but didn't sort of have it at the final for follow-up actions, sort of like emerging and new components around getting those funds. Again, you've mentioned that huge bill that the VP had mentioned. Again, that's within the ETP of 10 billion, which is 410 billion, which is a lot of money, dollars. So you mentioned about climate finance, around carbon credit in your presentation. What are the other sort of emerging sort of opportunities or ways that funds could also be gotten? Again, it's fiscal resilience in however many ways possible. So I just wanted to know sort of what your thoughts were on that, or if you had something as finding of that in terms of your study.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tengi.
Okay. Any more? Thank you, Tengi. Okay, Mike, Doug, before you respond, let me just ask this question.
Don, I thought it's me and you that are asking all these things.
Yeah, but I can also ask you. So, all right. All right. So,
I'm just joking.
Okay, we are looking at revenue resilience, and can we also be looking for sources of revenue outside the oil and gas, looking at opportunities of developing the solid mineral sector to be able to support the process. Have you given any thoughts to this?
Okay.
Thank you. So you can respond.
Sir, I'm raising my hand up, please. I'm raising my hand.
Okay.
Sure.
Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Chris Ochono. I work for Nigeria Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative. And I want to commend the Prof for his presentation. I think he has actually enlightened us more about what this energy transition is all about. Now, from our vantage perspective, I don't know, do you think, what do you think the companies, the present companies engaging in that sector, that is in the oil and gas sector, how are they taking this? In your report, don't you think you can kind of talk about their approach, or are they accepting it, or they are lukewarm about it?
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Chris.
Is that it?
Yeah, that's all.
Okay. So thanks.
Sorry, can I just quickly add something?
Yes,
okay, go ahead, Tengi.
Okay, so just in terms of the, I guess the climate finance, carbon credits, and all those options I mentioned, I was also thinking in terms of the South African option of what they had. So JETP, if we're looking for fiscal resilience, what opportunities are also there around those sort of agreements that they were able to secure during the previous COP? And then keying into the company question, which is something I forgot to ask, was obviously you mentioned that we can still get up to 3.5 million barrels per day, while acknowledging divestments, acknowledging the tap sort of being closed because of trying to reduce risk in some regard. Is it possible, again, how does that actually work is one. And then tying that in, I know this is a bit of a convoluted question now. There's that whole gas question in terms of the gaps. Are there, you know, and a lot of those stranded assets questions as well. How can we sort of balance some areas? Again, we have a huge list, but we have a significant, we can't sort of do the same thing that we planned to do like maybe 40 years ago because the landscape has changed. So how do we now maybe forego some aspects that may not necessarily be able to achieve now to get benefits from maybe like a JETP agreement or something like that? Is that something that you thought about at all? Like potential trade-offs?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right, thank you.
All right. So let me just take them, not necessarily in any particular order, but I think Donald, your question it's quite apt, i.e., possibility of looking for revenues outside oil and gas. Of course, yes is the answer. This study will only just reference that. There's no major in-depth in that because we wanted to just simply maintain a focus on oil and gas specifically. But no doubt about that. This country will need a lot of money from everywhere. And that's why I talked about, which is part of what Tengi just talked about now. There are the sources, even within oil and gas itself, like carbon trading, you know, like can you structure your debt in one form or the other to such an extent that you use it for things around energy transition, you know, and all that, yeah. But I fully agree with you. Revenues from oil and gas are significant, but it will not cure everything, for sure. Okay. Yeah, Chris was asking how the readiness level or how what's the appetite of the existing companies to energy transition generally. So I will say it varies, okay, from the materiality of companies, okay. If you take it from the very, very big ones, like the 5 or 6 or 7 international oil companies, they're seriously going for it, and that's why you will see them. They're doing very true ambivalent things, which I talked about in my presentation. Whereas they're trying to, as much as possible, in areas where it is possible, they're trying to accelerate value capture from oil and gas. Whereas in some other places, they're actually jettisoning or divesting their assets and using the proceeds of the divestment to invest in renewable systems. So they are. One of the things, or one of the drivers for this, is the fact that as we're speaking right now, more than 30 banks around the whole world, and I'm talking of groups of banks, I'm not talking of branches, groups of banks, they are no longer even supporting any fossil fuel businesses any longer. In fact, the World Bank, the last time they gave money for oil and gas was in 2019, before COVID. So it's not even enough for you to go and sit down and say, I have a fantastic oil and gas business. These are the economics. It checks. But there's no money, okay? In 1 or 2 companies I sit on their board, each time you have to do that, you have to go in parallel with your plan for renewables. So you have to sweeten your oil and gas proposal with some balance of renewables. And the way such monies will even be released to you is they have to make sure that they're seeing progress in 1 and 2, 1 being your oil and gas, but they also need to see progress in your renewables. So yes, they are really seriously imbibing it, but if you go back to the quotes I gave towards the end of my talk, we need more oil to get out of oil. That is the place where everybody is today, including big countries like Saudi Arabia. That's why everybody wants to increase their production so that you get more oil, more revenues, and use that revenue to transit. Okay. Thank you for that question, Chris. Tengi, yes, like I said, you're right. Trading oil just purely for revenues is going to decline. It's going to decline very, very seriously because the market is going to shrink. You'll find out that in the next 10, 15 years, unlike today, when you go to market, there's everybody who wants to buy oil from you. But even today, in some cases, we are even discounting our oil, okay, to even get buyers. Now, can you imagine in the next 10, 15 years? So when that time comes, if you met 100 people in market today, maybe only about 5 people. And at that point in time, of course, it's a buyer's market. So you can't do much shakara as much as possible. Prices will go down. Therefore, your take home will be a lot less. And that's why we should from now be thinking around other things. For example, how can we stretch the value chain internally? Okay, so instead of and thank you, I've given this talk many years ago The finite value of a barrel of crude is much more than $1,000, much more than $1,000. So when you sell it today at $100, you are putting $900 in somebody's pocket. So why don't you stretch that value chain in your own country, employ people, get out of that 1,000, even if you can get 600, okay? So instead of selling raw materials, be selling finished products to those people. And this is where the market discussion comes in. You find out, what does Chinese market need? What does South African market need? And make sure you tailor your processing to get those kind of products. Then you take it to the market. In fact, they will welcome you so much. So that's how it all works. You find out what people will require in the market, and you tailor everything. You tailor your resources to make sure that so it's still producibility. It's just that the product is changing. It's changing from raw crude to maybe petrochemicals, maybe to fertilizer, maybe to other things. Those are all the things, maybe to pharmaceuticals. Those are the things we need to be thinking around going forward. You talked about the possibility of doing 3.5 million barrels per day. I think it is possible. It's just if people want it to happen, it will happen. And I know we have issues in this country, no doubt about that. So even as of today, the installed capacity we have for oil alone is for 3 million barrels. The installed capacity. Now, granted that most of them might have also deteriorated in terms of pipelines and all that, tank farms here and there. Yes, that's fine. But the mere fact that we have even gotten there before means that all we need to then to go and do into some of those areas is upgrades, okay, and refinements here and there and all that. So it is possible. But even the source of it really is in the subsurface. Do you even have the resources? That's where it all starts from. Okay, so we're still one of the top 12, whether you look at it in terms of gas or in terms of oil, resource holders in the world. If we're not careful, the rate at which we are producing our oil, which is less than 2% per annum, or the rate at which you are producing your gas, which is less than 1.5% per annum, 40% of these things will be stranded underground someday. Because you are thinking of it will be required in 100 years' time. Sorry, it's not going to, probably it's not going to be. And in any case, you need money today to develop this country. Why are you keeping it under the ground? That's why we must find a way. And you talk about the how. All the whats I gave, I purposefully didn't talk about the hows. I'm going to bring back the hows at our next national dialogue, because each of the hows require real discussion, and I don't want to rush through them. Okay, so it is possible, and I'm going to discuss each of those interventions, whether it is sourcing for funds, whether it is expanding gas, whether it is growing oil to 3.5 million barrels per day. I will talk about the house later, so don't mind, Sengi. I'm going to come back with that. And all these house, again, they will all be in the draft of the document, which I will send out even before the national dialogue, so you will see it. Okay.
All right. That's fine. Thanks.
Okay. You also talked about all these emerging funds and all that. They're all still very much on the table. Some are already like trading and credits, carbon credits and all that. All that is happening. But there's so much systems in place today that are already being practiced that you can. Take simple things like installing solar systems in your house, okay? And my son has done this already where he lives abroad, for example. Just because he has installed solar systems in his house, so he's getting a lot of tax credits. That's number one. And then the government is taking any excess generation from his solar system back into the grid. So they're even paying him for that also. Okay. So these are all the things around moving towards renewables that they're not things that we should even think around. They're already happening in other places. All we need to do is copy and adapt, not necessarily copy and paste, but at least we should adapt it to suit our own localities there. But there's a lot that is happening. I know during the ETP, the team of the vice president worked a lot around things around depths for climate change, kind of swapping things here and there, which is okay. My worry with some of those things, and I think it touched on some of the things, I don't know who talked about it, whether it is Mona or somebody. Yes, it can happen, but frankly speaking, a lot of all those things will be almost tailor-monitored by those guys. You cannot have a forgiveness and you take that forgiveness and go and do party. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And that's why when we talk around a just transition, it has to happen. It has to be a just transition because if it is not just, then we continue to just emit the way we like here. And before you know it, one hurricane will leave the west coast of Africa and go and destroy the whole of the Caribbean, and then move towards the United States. So it has to be just. However, as much as it is morally right that it has to be just, we're not so much on a high moral ground either, because tomorrow again you start begging for money here and there, aid here, debt here. It doesn't hang together. He who blows the pipe, like they say, I think they say it dictates the tune. I think these days it even dictates the dancing too. It's not just the tune. So we have to be, yeah. And I sympathize, especially with African situation. But we need to do a lot more than we do, and that's why I like the discussion from Muna talking about using example, as a very good leverage for quite a lot of these. So when I talked about shifting trade options or trade destination, it is also about shifting your products to the market. Okay, so instead of going with Gary, maybe we go with Eba. Okay, you have to think slightly differently, and instead of taking it to maybe to China and India, maybe the people that need it are actually in DRC Congo or maybe South Africa. Those are all the things. Take for example the 8 billion that was recently given to Congo coal replacement, coal fire replacement in South Africa, for example. A lot of that, Nigeria will have seriously even benefited from it in terms of gas supply, you know, and you don't need to lay pipeline. It's just LNG expansion. It will take you only like 9 days, probably 9, maybe 7, to sail from Bonny to Cape Town. So why won't you just, pitch on that? And I bet you that 8 billion is just a first phase, because South Africa is so much into coal to take them a long time to get out of it. Okay, fine. Let's assume you've missed out of the first 8 billion. Can you now begin to think about the next 8 billion? Even to South Africa that is behind you here. Those are the thinking, or the kind of thinking that I'm really looking at. And I agree with you, Muna. Because we have things to sell, because we have more mouths to feed, Nigeria should play a much a stronger role in ACFTA than any other person. Basi, reconciliation of this transition when we still have so much oil under the ground and all that. Yeah, well, it's our problem. And again, I have adduced to that very quickly. So you're not the only person who has plenty of oil under the ground. In fact, there are about 9 people ahead of you. Number 1 being Venezuela, number 2 being Saudi Arabia, and then every other person following them. The question you should be asking yourself, what are those people doing right now that these same messages of energy transition is going around? What are they doing with their own? Okay, and then you do the same thing. And I mentioned it already. Okay, some people are doubling their production immediately, which is to say, accelerate value capture. Let's do it quickly today. And Africa, especially Nigeria, we're in a better position to do that, because like I said, we're emitting less than 4%, the whole of Africa, the whole of emissions in the world, we have less than 4% of it. So in the short to medium term, and I'm talking of 10 to 15 years time, we should open up and produce our oil and gas as much as possible. But noting that we have a roadmap to 2060, which has been agreed by everybody. That's all we need to do. It is not whether you are going with bicycle or you are going with a Ferrari to 2060. We have said 2060. Leave us as we are going to get there. But one of the ways to get there, like I said, you need more oil to get out of this oil, because you need the money, and there's no other place that money is going to come from. If I move over to Faith, who was talking about the closure of coal. First of all, if you go into the coal resource holders in the world, Nigeria doesn't even feature, because we have less than 0.5% of the world reserves of coal. So when we're talking about energy transition, when Nigeria is mentioned, they don't even mention you in terms of coal, because you are so little in it. However, the little you have, you should have continued to use it. That somebody came to talk to you about that coal is dirty. Hey, there's also something called clean coal. There's a lot of technology around coal. If Germany just reopened last 2, 3, or 4 weeks, and another coal plant, US is still opening in Virginia and every other places. but you decided to keep the one in Enugu closed. It is your choice. But I think it's the wrong choice. Completely wrong choice. Oil gluts. Oil gluts is not for today. It's for the next couple of years, maybe 10, maybe 15. But what you need to do, you need to start today, okay? Because before you know it, 15 years is gone. When we were doing the Vision 2020, we thought 2020, many of us would even be dead by that time. Now we are past 2020, you know. So it's we need to begin to do certain things from today. And one of it I mentioned, but the others I will talk about when we do another the closeout national dialogue. But one of the key things is how to avoid your market being spoiled is to make sure that you go into that market with a low cost set of volumes, because you don't want to go to the market and sell below your cost. So you need to then go back to your production people. How can we bring down our production cost from where it is today to where it is going to be marketable? Okay, what are those cost drivers? Okay, of which of course we all know that insecurity is a major thing, you know, and we have all seen how it has destroyed our country, especially in oil and gas, and we are not even. It's not even this year you're going to feel it. It is next year, because I can tell you that most of the 30-something companies that are producing today will not pay tax next year, because you only pay tax on profitability. They are not going to be profitable. None of them will declare profit. Therefore, there is no tax next year. So we're really going to be in a mess next year. Yeah. If I round up with one, Mike was just a lot of sharpening the framework, what we're doing, and helping to refocus some of the recommendations we'll be making in our report. So thank you, Mike. And then Taiwo Otitola was actually the first person in terms of are we in charge of our production? I would think so. Abuja is in charge. So do we know the quantity? I think roughly so. About a week ago, I actually headed a metering and measurement conference in Abuja. I convened that, and it's all addressing the same issue of quantification, but also including even qualification. So making sure that we know what we produce, we know what is stolen, and we know what is even not produced at all. So and one of the slides I showed you when I showed the components of the decline, which is about total 55% from 2012, I showed you exactly what the components of the declines are. So I mean, give or take, they're in ranges, but we do have a fair idea of what we're producing. I have a lot of sympathy to your discussions around consumption of PMS. I don't know whether even if we're drinking it, frankly speaking, it's so really difficult. Many years ago, about 14 years ago, I was in the ministry myself. And in 2008, we paid about 550 billion naira for subsidy. And because I was on sabbatical to government, I thought my head almost blew up. Okay, I thought this was just how can that happen? Okay, and the next year it went up a little bit to 650, and these days they are talking of trillions. I mean, I just don't understand it. 60 something, 90 something. I hear anyway that NNPC is doing a forensic audit on this, and the National Assembly, or I think the House of Reps, but it's just certainly it's not consumption in country alone. No, maybe quite a lot of it again ends up in other countries around West Africa. Yeah. I've talked about your talk around just energy. Yes, it's got to be just, it's got to be fair. Yeah, but we have to put our acts together as a country. Yeah, I think that's really what I want to say about most of the chip. And thank you so very much. We will keep all this and if there are more, please just send them to Dr. Donald, and we'll get them so that we'll make sure that we appropriately capture most of these initiatives and insights in the final report. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Doc. Just one more comment. I'm not expecting you to respond on this now, but probably take into consideration. Sure. Earlier in your presentation, you talked about the issue of technology.
Yes.
As a determinant of what the energy transition plan should look like. But I'm not sure that that was reflected in when you started looking at the imperatives or the challenges and how Nigeria should move on. Probably you might want to take that on too, because when you talk about issue of technology, there are issues about what technology we have in country or around us that we affect the energy transition. Even if we're going to use our oil and gas domestically or within Africa, how does technology impact on this? Yeah. So I guess there is no pressing input from any other person. Doc, do you have any idea on the next steps?
Oh yes. We have a session on October 6th together with NRGI, and hopefully we'll have been able to converge all these insights into the study, and probably even issue a draft report. And at the back of that national dialogue, which NRGI is organizing, maybe the following day we might be able to do a closeout dialogue with a select set of stakeholders to begin to finalize the report. So that's basically, but I said between now and then, if anybody has additional things they think we should look at, if they can send it to you or Dr. Mike, and I know I can get them through the two of you. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I know we have agreed with NRGI for that level of participation during the dialogue, which is limited anyway, but that the follow-up meeting, we were thinking about the 6th or 7th, the 7th.
Okay.
But I have received some comments from some other persons that there is likely going to be a public holiday around that period that may possibly affect the gathering if we're going to go ahead with the 7th. But we're still looking at that. We probably, if it looks true, we may be looking at another date for that half-day event.
That's fine. That's fine. No problem at all. I mean, that certainly then will give people even enough chance to read through the reports. So that's fine. Yeah.
Any comment from Tengi and Mike?
Well, none from my end. Just to say that we are happy with the progress so far. Yes, there is plenty of opportunity even after the national dialogue coming up on the 6th to carry out some more engagements if that is possible. I want to also say that we also looking at having like a follow-on to that national dialogue, where we might also have the opportunity of NRGI, based on how it goes on the 6th of October, NRGI and EITI will also have the opportunity of carrying out some follow-on discussions or concrete action, taking up on some action plans coming out of the 6th as part of further dissemination of the outcome of this ongoing study. So yes, planning another stakeholder engagement immediately after the dialogue is fine, but we can also look at so there is some noise filtering in from someone. Okay, so yeah, I agree completely with the plan, and we can also look at a few days after the national dialogue to have that engagement. Thank you very much.
So Mike, if I may, yourself and Donald, one of the things we need to begin to think of, you see, because there's so much of these bits and pieces of discussion around the transition across various agencies of government and even outside government. We need to think of how to converge all those brain power eventually. I don't know whether it is the Ministry of Environment who is now going to champion a detailed, what I call a detailed roadmap from now to 2050. I don't know, but I think it's something we need to all think around, how to converge all these fantastic initiatives that will help government to actually have a simple and single roadmap, okay, to 2060. Yeah.
So yeah, Chair, I completely agree with you. We should probably plan a dialogue like we have had today. To be honest, I expected some of them, some of the agencies at today's gathering. Maybe I didn't get the description right, but we can arrange that as quickly as possible, even as part of the study, because it might enrich the study to make reference to ongoing similar activities or programs in the various agencies. For sure, I know that NNPC has or we're planning of developing their own energy transition plan. So such a thing can be referenced in our report. I said earlier in my earlier remark, it's important that NATI gets to be viewed as an anchor point, right?
Yes.
Even the framework for EITI implementation gives NATI that advantage to convene stakeholders across in issues like as important as energy transition. So this is the chance we have to help the team to actually play that role. So I will highlight this to Dr. Donald to try and see if we can have like an engagement, not an elaborate one, just the key agencies together. And we have this kind of exchange with them and use the opportunity to also gather some useful input. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and you're very correct. For me, I think, I mean, knowing how government works, and some of this kind of thing we've done for one or two African countries, it's always premature of any agency to draw up a plan that is not hung on a government policy, you know. So I mean, the thing is to quickly get what we're doing to a conclusion and make sure that government fashions out the appropriate policies, okay, that then any other person can key into those policies, okay, and then it aligns, and then there will be serious alignment. And like I mentioned in my discussion, some of those new reforms will require a change in legislation or amendments of existing acts and all that. So it's not just an easy thing for just any agency to just say, I'm doing an energy transition map and all that. It's got to be hung on a particular government policy. This is what happens around the whole world. But anyway, we'll get there. Thank you.
Yeah, let me just that we had actually identified several of these agencies, Ministry of Environment, NNPC, Ministry of Finance, and some others. Unfortunately, I don't know what happened, but they were not able to join this, but we definitely plan to involve them in subsequent engagements. And we should also be able to share the report with them before that event.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Okay, thanks everyone for.
Good afternoon, everyone. Ministry of Mines and Steel is here.
Okay, thank you.
I'm in attendance. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we look forward to another engagement.
Ministry of Mines and Steel Development. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. So we close the event now, and we hope that we will be able to meet again.
Thank you.
On the 6th and 7th, or 6th and any other day that we agree to meet. Thank you very much for your input.
Thank you.
Doc, we really appreciate the input you have made into this work. And we thank
you,
Mike, for the support and the willingness to even go extra mile. On behalf of the ES, I want to appreciate all of you and thank you for being part of the event. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a good day. Have a good weekend.
Well, everyone.
Bye. So when? Okay.